Coming up, the New York Football Giants have a date with the Green Bay Packers at home on Monday Night Football, but what a weekend of games it was. We break down some of the more surprising matchups and all the implications for that Giants playoff or draft stock picture coming up next. Yes, my friends, it is OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Andrew Makowitz. And it was, Andy, a certainly healthy, wealthy, and wise Monday morning for you because the Giants didn't play, and all it took was sitting back, relaxing over the weekend, and watching some NFL chaos unfold.
It was nice. We had the bye week recently where we didn't have to worry about things, which was great. It feels like it's been an extended rest since we've seen the Giants play football, right? Because not only do we have the bye, but then you also get the additional day on Sunday. It feels like we haven't. I've only seen Tommy DeVito in every social media and Instagram thing that he could possibly do, showing off his Italianness, but I haven't seen any play on the field.
Which I don't even know. I don't even know if Tommy DeVito is that Italian. I know his father is that Italian. I've seen his father. That dude is clearly Italian, and I appreciate it. Right?
But if you put it this way, if you're Tommy DeVito and you're undrafted and you don't know how long this is going to last for, you ride that wave all the way to shore, right?
I think he should have gone the other way. I think he should have corrected people and said, "Excuse me, my name is Thomas DeVito, and you'll refer to me as such." And all these cutlets, quite frankly, feel a little bit slanderous. No, he's having a good time, and it is good. And by the way, when you say on the bye week followed by this, it's let's be honest. When the Giants aren't having a great season, on the bye week, it was hey, nothing to worry about. The Giants aren't playing. And then even this one, I appreciate the idea of being able to watch games on Sunday and go there's no sweat here. There's no angst here. I'm just sitting back, watching football games, enjoying myself. And then, I'll worry about on Monday night what the Giants are going to do. And in that vein, man, when we go over and look at this, there was a whole bunch of games. I think I want to tap into last night just real quick here, because obviously it's in the division. Obviously it's Sunday Night Football, Eagles and Dallas. I mean, I am a little bit shocked that after the journey, it was a week ago when everyone was talking about, yep, Philadelphia, lock it in, nothing to worry about. And at the same time, people were saying how good Dallas was playing. Now, coming into this game, I think people saw this as being one of those ones that the Cowboys could take off of the Eagles. But the Eagles now fall out of the division lead. They fall out of home field advantage. And all of a sudden, it's a little bit of chaos here if you're Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, who seem like they're going to limp their way into the playoffs and most likely have to be a road team and go and get a road victory somewhere.
I mean, Dallas looks great. There's no other way around it. It's so hard.
Wish I didn't have to say
it. It's hard because on one hand, you have the Eagles who are struggling, and you're like, all right, it kind of feels good to see Nick Sirianni have to take the smug look off of his face and be in the reality that, wow, we're not playing as well as we did before.
That's right.
But Dallas looks so good. Stephon Gilmore looked so good against A.J. Brown defending him. Their whole defense, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. And, I mean, everyone talks about it, but Dak Prescott is playing at the highest level that he's ever played. The way that he's manipulating defenses to get the looks that he wants. He's looking off safeties. He's looking off linebackers, and he's putting himself in a position for success. It's why CeeDee Lamb looks amazing. It's why Michael Gallup has had a resurgence. It's why Jake Ferguson looks like, the next Jason Witten, Dalton Schultz of the group.
Right.
I mean, that game right now on a neutral field, San Francisco looks great. Dallas looks great. It feels like those two would be in for a really big game. I think if the Eagles play the Cowboys tomorrow on a neutral field, Dallas would win by 2 touchdowns. That's the big difference between the two right now.
Oh, yeah, man. Slinging 271 for Dak Prescott, under control football. And last night, really, I mean, they get out to a monster lead, basically, and it doesn't look like Philadelphia has the ability to move the ball offensively. So then you're in somewhat cruise control. If required, you feel like Dallas could have easily put up 40+ on Philadelphia last night if they had to. So, man, Dak Prescott, I'll say this. They're a division rival, and I think Dak Prescott is a very easy quarterback to kind of be a punching bag over the last handful of years. And by the way, it's still going to be the same thing. They got to go to the playoffs, and they have to win football games. That's still the ultimate thing here. But if they win the division, if they win it by a game margin here after this win over Philly, then you'll certainly start to look at it a little bit differently. Like you'll say that they've checked the box of now being one of the more dominant regular season teams. Can it translate over to the playoffs? Another team. Go ahead, Andy. Oh, you got a little something extra there.
Well, the only thing I was going to say, well, transitioning to some of the other games, is remember that the NFL is kind of like a week to week thing. Like we can't get swept up in the moment of, wow, Dallas is amazing. Because, like, if you think about the ebbs and flows of the season, the Detroit Lions went into Kansas City and won against the Chiefs. And we said, the Lions are the best team, on the planet right now. Who's better than them? The Lions then go lose a game to the Bears. The Chiefs look broken. And that was only like a month and a half, 2 months ago, Adam. And so when you think about the ebbs and flows of the season, right now Dallas looks great. But wait 3 weeks from now, and all of a sudden they may look like a completely different team. It's the crazy part of the NFL.
Well, sure. You mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost to the Eagles a month ago, beat the Raiders, and then lost to the Packers and lost to the Bills, right? So, like, you are talking about a Chiefs team, and just a note on that one in the AFC side of it. I don't know for sure. I mean, listen, I think every Giants fan is taking like this some type of weird victory lap on Kadarius Toney lining up with his foot off sides, and that ruins the dump off play, the backflip there from Travis Kelce and the touchdown and all those things. And then Mahomes. This is the first time that I've seen like Mahomes. Where do you stand on that? Let's use that as the conversation here, because Mahomes comes out of that game. I'm fine with not throwing your teammate under the bus because he lines up off sides and whatever. But are you surprised that Mahomes like went so up and in on the refs for like, listen, when you show the replay and you can see, it's not even like if Kadarius Toney's, four toes, I'll use the Nets. When Kevin Durant's toe was on the line for that triple, right? And it could have been against the Milwaukee Bucks a couple of years ago. Would I have liked the refs to say, it was so close. We'll go ahead and we'll give him the 3 points. Sure. But like, it was like 3 inches of his foot. He was fully in line and over the ball, right? Like he was offsides. Like, I don't know if not for rules, what do we have? Society crumbles. Like it was really weird to hear the way Mahomes talked about that.
Everyone got upset because it's a rule that historically hasn't been called offensive offsides. It's something that like just doesn't really happen. However, Adam, in the offseason, they said we are going to make this a point to start calling it more. They've called it
Right.
11 times so far this year. It's not like this was the first time that someone had to
Right.
like open up the rule book, scroll to page 962 and find some obscure rule that he broke. Like he was clearly offside. You couldn't see the ball because his helmet was blocking the ball. But to your point on Patrick Mahomes, he went so hard and was so upset about this. And Adam, it's that psychological deeper meaning and deeper context. A year or two ago, he would do the Aaron Rodgers RELAX and
That's
feel
right.
really good and say, "We're good because I'm here and we are going to win the Super Bowl." You could tell that his hysteria was that he is shook right now. He is not confident that this team can overcome adversity. And so he needs to be able to yell and lash out at someone. It just so happens that it's the referees, even though his teammate was the one that was offside. So for me, I think he's realizing like he is not confident that if he has to go somewhere on the road in the playoffs and win games, that they are going to overcome it at this point.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because you take away the Raiders game where they won 31-17. You're talking about a football team that has not scored over 20 points outside of that Dolphins matchup. And like on the one hand, you go, "Oh, well, it was the Dolphins and they're a good team and you beat them." But it's like, yeah, but the Dolphins have some of their own concerns just from I think like playoff and what they're going to be when they face really gritty, grind out kind of games. And it's the Dolphins where you should be able to put up a ton of points. You won 21-14. Like, I just think that team is in a weird spot. Their wide receiver core is in a weird spot. Travis Kelce is not having the same type of year that he normally has. But again, maybe your point, the themes of these seasons are that, like, well, 3-4 games from now, what does it look like? It's just that right now, Kansas City is struggling, arguably at the exact wrong time relative to how the Cowboys have played. Other games, man, they came out on this Sunday. I look across this one, and I will say that which one do
I
I
have a
like
game. I
here?
have a game. I have a game
Go
for you.
ahead. Yeah.
The Denver Broncos and
That's
the
the
Los
one.
Angeles Chargers is a game that
That's
I'm sitting
the one.
here, and it's very difficult for me because of a couple of things. One, Russell Wilson, looks better than he did last year. You got to give Sean Payton credit. He came out with a flamethrower and Nathaniel Hackett and everyone in the organization for last year, and everyone started laughing at him early. Now this team has a legitimate shot to make the playoffs.
6 out of 7.
I mean, you have to give them kudos. And as much as you give them kudos, you have to look at the Los Angeles Chargers and just shake your head at him and be like, what is going on? Because everyone tells me, and this is where the advanced analytics and everyone's going to be upset, but everyone tells me that Justin Herbert is the like a top 3 quarterback in the league, and he's 2 games under 500 with multiple head coaches, multiple offensive coordinators, and he's the highest paid quarterback in the entire NFL. I've been told by everyone that if you have a top 3 quarterback, you will like automatically make the playoffs and you win games in spite of everything else. Like where are you? Where are you on that piece? Because I feel like he gets a pass, and yet his teams just flame out all the time.
But that, yeah, well, here's the deal. Because I saw somebody said this. They go, is there any other explanation than that the Chargers are secretly tanking, like to the way they're playing? And I said, you're overlooking ineptitude. Like, I just think that Staley is a terrible coach. I think that I don't even know the whole coaching staff, so I'm not going to speak about everybody. They're a bad coaching staff. Is Justin Herbert a perfect quarterback? Right? Like, is he the exact model of guy we thought when he was coming out? Probably not. And also, you have far too many sample sizes of him being really good, of him being an elite level quarterback to sit here and say, oh, yeah, he really doesn't get it, or he's not clutch, or he can't take this team to the playoffs and go on deep runs. This is a coaching issue. It was a coaching issue last year. They decided to ride with him. And then you came into this year and there were like a couple of little moments early. Oh, we're not so sure. Is it going to be, is it going to be, you're seeing it. It's unraveling with consistency. And it's not even about like some of the more egregious things we've seen, timeout management, decisions to go for it or not, being an ultra conservative coach, but then getting weirdly aggressive because probably the media has been critiquing you in, in the off weeks and coming into game matchups. I just think like there's no world. Staley's gone. They're going to bring in a whole new coaching staff and they're going to say, we believe in Justin Herbert. Like clearly if we're making a hierarchy of problems, is not the issue here. Quentin Johnson, who had a good game yesterday, also had helped this not be a different story. Hey, they've been a little clunky, but they still found a way to win. Well, when your number 1 first-round wide receiver is dropping balls off his kneecaps multiple weeks in a row, that's going to make it look worse too. So, and I'm not even like overly defending Justin Herbert because he hasn't been the guy kind of we thought he was, but I guarantee you, if you go back to this past offseason and it's Sean Payton going to the Chargers, not San Diego, but LA, if it's Sean Payton going to the Chargers, you are talking about not even a team that's surging 6 out of 7 down the back end here. You're talking about a team competing for a division title and going to the playoffs.
Listen, you're right. It's a little bit tongue in cheek of me to say this stuff about Justin Herbert just because he is the highest paid and
Yes.
has an under 500 record, and it's just like everyone tells me how amazing he is. Quinn Johnson dropping passes. Mike Williams, his other star wide receiver, got hurt. Keenan Allen has had some shoulder issues. Austin Eckler hasn't looked great, but also like if you're a top 5 quarterback, you expect you to be able to overcome some of these things.
Of
But
course.
apparently, the coaching of Brandon Staley and even the offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, apparently he's in a position where he can't overcome the deficiencies of his head coach. That is pretty wild to me.
It is insane. We have some other games we want to talk about here, but let's take a beat. Let's take a moment and let's talk about the New York Football Giants because they will be playing on Monday Night Football. They will be taking on the Green Bay Packers. They are getting 6 points at home. We know that makes them a 9-point dog on a neutral site, plus 235 on the money line. The over-under is set at just 37. Now, before we talk about Jordan Love and some of these matchup things, Andy, just from that high-level look, when you see 37 as the over-under, how little confidence do you have that they think Vegas thinks it's going to be, 17-14. It's going to be 20-17 late. Going to be a tight battle here as opposed to, oh no, this is the Tommy DeVito wakes up from this Cinderella cutlet story that he's been on and the Packers are really a surging team right now.
Yeah, I mean the Packers have looked great, but the Packers are coming off a big win, but also a few big injuries to their team in
I
terms
do
of
like this.
in
If your pro Giants win football games, the injury update for the Green Bay Packers is not pretty for them.
Yeah, I mean, Jair Alexander is their star cornerback. He's their best corner. He is out for this game. I think their best wide receiver is Christian Watson. Caught 2 touchdown passes in the last game. He is out for this game. So you're
Yep.
talking about their best defensive cornerback, their best wide receiving weapon are both out. And then there's question marks about Aaron Jones, whether he's going to be healthy. A handful of other players for the Packers. I mean, they're not coming in at full strength, Adam. Which, if you're a Giants fan, you got to look at it and say, if while Jordan Love is playing tremendous football. The one advantage that the Giants may have is on the injury side of things.
100%. So we're going to get to our official picks around this and some more details here. But the other things that we didn't look at from a game perspective are all the ones that really matter to the New York Football Giants. There's that Monday night, obviously Monday night football game for them. There's Sunday night football. There's these late games, everything. Some things didn't go great for the Giants over the weekend. If we talk about from a wanting to be a bubble team, wanting to have some juice in these games down the stretch of the season, obviously the Cowboys flip-flop themselves up into the division lead. It just puts the Eagles into the 5th position, the wild card, obviously at 10-3. But then the other thing happened, and there's a couple other games here. But the other game that happened was arguably something that set back the NFL script about 1,000 years. And that was the Minnesota Vikings and the Las Vegas Raiders. And I feel for our buddy Antonio Pierce because I really think that they deserved to scrape out a win there in some form or fashion. Instead, a barn burner, 3-0 game. Not only a disastrous game from like entertainment standpoint, but a disastrous game for the New York Football Giants because Minnesota was one of those teams, Andy, that we listed as, don't worry, what's going to come on? Dobbs starting, not starting. They pulled him in this game. And that was the spark. That was the spark for Minnesota that got them in field goal position. That one really hurt because it kept another team up there above 500.
It was a brutal game. I mean, they were averaging 3.3 yards per play. It was just bad all around. You could tell that Josh
I made a
Dobbs.
disastrous live bet. I said there's no way they could suck this bad at halftime. It was 0-0. And I said, come on, give me the over 20.5 points. These guys will get 3 touchdowns. I'm on drugs. 3 touchdowns, I say.
Yeah, that is pretty egregious,
I
actually.
could have taken the under at 3.5.
Yeah, yeah, literally. You're like, next field goal wins, literally was how it went. I mean, it's really tough because that game felt like it was a coin flip. Both teams were inept. The idea is, there was one pick thrown by Aiden O'Connell, 2 fumbles lost by the Raiders.
That's right.
The turnover battle was 3-0, which happened to be the final score of 3-0. And you got to think that, like, without one of those turnovers, like, I think the Raiders probably would have won that game.
In my defense, too, I placed that live bet for the over seconds before they fumbled at the start of the third quarter when they're crossing midfield. So, like, I go, and the bet is in. Fumble, change of possession. I was like, I've made a huge mistake. If you could just
cash out. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, guess what? It turns out they're not offering cash outs on those type of idiotic bets that you make. Now, that's the first one, though. The other game you look at here is the LA Rams, right? The LA Rams and Matt Stafford, man, this guy has lost some heartbreakers. He's also gone ahead and given you games like this where they lose 37-31. So this one narrowly goes in favor for the New York Football Giants in the overtime there. 6-7 now for the Rams as they sit there in the 8th position. The Seattle Seahawks, they lose their game 6-7. So, look at this little sandwich of teams where it's all going to be okay. Here's where it's not going to be okay. You have the Falcons, you have the Saints, and even the Bears. The Saints obviously had to beat the Carolina Panthers as we expected. And even though the Falcons lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it just created this hodgepodge of 6-7 teams from 11 all the way up to maybe the Packers at 6-7 if the Giants get the W in that 7th position. It's a log jam, Andy, and too many teams are winning football games.
Yeah, so for the things that went right for the Giants, there was an equal amount that went wrong. At one point, it felt like the political spectrum where they're turning things red and blue, and you're like, which one is going to tip the balance for the Giants' playoff schedule and their chances? That Chicago one was really interesting because
Yeah,
we keep talking about how
dude.
the 7th playoff spot, the fact that the NFL put this in, it's like nearly impossible to be eliminated with 4 or 5 games left, which keeps every team in like the bottom 5 picking in the draft and also available for a playoff berth. And when
100%.
you look at Chicago, they're 5-4 in their last 9 games. So they're playing above 500 football. They do have to go to Cleveland, who now is resurgent with Joe Flacco, but
Joe
the
Flacco.
Browns,
I forgot to mention Joe Flacco is going to lead the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. It's insane.
unbelievable. You have the Browns, the Cardinals, the Falcons, and the Packers up for the Bears. Like, if you told me they went 3-1, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, they could definitely do that with the way that defense is playing in Chicago. So, yeah, I mean, the Minnesota one was crippling. Obviously,
Yeah.
to see the Rams and the Seattle Seahawks lose was important for the Giants. It felt like you got a couple of good things here and there. Obviously, with the Patriots winning and the Bears winning, if you care about the tankathon piece of it, You're back into the top 5. If you care about the playoff picture, you got a little bit of a mixed bag. But if you win this weekend, you are only one game out of the playoffs. And when we said, oh, well, those two Philly games are definite losses. The way that Philly's playing right now, while the Giants are not a better team than them, it, you'd rather be playing them at the end of the season when they're not looking as good, as opposed to week 1, 2, or 3 where they're fully healthy and Jalen Hurts looks like he's the MVP.
Well, I don't know what to make of it about, like, do the Eagles need those games potentially versus, we were saying, well, maybe they don't need one of those 2 games when you play them late in the season. So there's that part of it. But I guess to your point, at least they don't look as good or as strong as they once did. By the way, even though we say like some teams won or lost, like, the Bucks winning that game, it's funny with the NFC South because, okay, now the Bucks are in the division lead at 6-7. And you have 2 teams in the Falcons and the Saints, both at 6-7. And we know that the Giants are going to play the Saints head to head. So you can overcome that. Like, there's this world where, thankfully, as long as week over week, all that happens there is somebody else goes back up in that division lead. And arguably, I guess at this point, you'd say now have the Bucks lose and have the Atlanta Falcons win and have the Saints lose to get them out of the way and then do it one more time, right? And just keep trying to keep some team there around the mix. Or no, actually, let's just real quick on that note. Just have the Falcons lose out and have the Saints lose out. That's all we want. Buccaneers, you're in. You made it. Like, just have them lose out, never look back.
Well, the issue is that all these teams play each other as well. So while the Giants get to play the Rams, who look really good, they get to play the Saints, who are and the Packers, in this upcoming game. Those are wins for the Giants. But when you look at the rest of the schedule, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week play the Green Bay Packers. In 3 weeks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints also play the Falcons the last game of the season. So, like, all of these teams are going to get at least one more win somewhere, which makes it really, really hard for the Giants. It makes it harder when you see that the Vikings won 3-0. You're like, there's only really one spot, and all these teams are going to play each other, and someone's going to inherently get a win out of it.
You got to savor the flavor because next week's slate, as you mentioned, the Bucks and the Packers, so something's not going to go great for the Giants potentially there. But also, as the Saints will be playing the Giants, so you can get that win there. The Falcons will play the Panthers, and the Rams will be playing the Washington Commanders. Which, by the way, before we turn our attention to this game, just a little footnote here as we talk about we said the playoff picture, also on Tankathon, right? So 2 weeks ago when we talked about this, it was, man, you could be all the way back to the 16th spot with just 5 wins at the end of the year. Now, with the way everything's gone, you're talking about all the way to the 14th position, 6-7 teams, right? Then 5-8 on that run, all the way to 7th. Then it's the Tennessee Titans who are playing tonight as well, 4-8 along with the Giants. The Washington Commanders quietly have lost 4 straight games. They're 4-9. They're in 4th position right now. And Arizona, who won their last game and who has Kyler Murray back and who seems willing to go out and win football games if they can for some symbolic meaning of, hey, when we got our, quote, franchise quarterback back, we look like a better team. The Commanders might have done it right. Strip away just enough parts so you make sure that you end up at the top of that draft. And whether or not they think that Sam Howell is the guy or not, they're going to be in prime spot to make that decision for themselves come draft time potentially.
Well, and when we talk about the draft, Adam, this is why I was not in favor of just losing all the games out. One, because I just enjoy happiness around the holidays and just like a win maybe makes me feel good. But like, think about where we were a month ago when everyone's like, if you don't get Caleb Williams or Drake May, then the whole thing is going down the tubes. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, Jaden Daniels wins the Heisman. Even if the Giants pick 8th, maybe they get him. Now you're hearing Marvin Harrison Jr. may go back to school because he's got an NIL deal. It's just fascinating to me that like a month ago, everyone was mad at the Giants for winning games. Now all of a sudden, like there's different options. We don't know if the same players are going to come out or not. And that's why you can't like game theory this out a month and a half prior to any of the games being played.
And by the way, now when you go over look at some different metrics for the draft order, mock draft scenarios, Caleb Williams still sitting at the top right now as it stands for the Bears, but you got Drake May going there. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. Is he coming out or not in 3rd position? But you have now 1, 2, 3 offensive linemen listed inside of the top 10. There was only 1 offensive lineman listed there a month ago. The college season mattered, how that finished out. And that's just a little programming note here. As the season winds down and as we go towards what will most likely be the Giants offseason, it's going to be about, let's go back and take a look at these guys' tapes in college. Where should the Giants be going? Where can they maximize their value? And even the Caleb Williams thing, like it's your point. You don't know what it's going to look like 3 weeks from now. You didn't know what it was going to look like 2 weeks ago, especially just from a like, who's the player you want? Now listen, being at the top of the draft always makes your decision process easier. but it's, I think, just it's less stressful to let the game play out each week and then say, oh, what does that maybe mean? Right. And let the next game play out. Okay, what does that really mean? And we'll find out sooner than later. One thing that we're going to find out sooner than later, Andy, is whether or not the New York Football Giants have a little bit of juice here. Is this team maybe riding a bit of that Tommy Cutlet wave and capable, I say, on a 2-game winning streak of going out and beating the Green Bay Packers? The biggest problem here for me right now is that the Packers have they finally started to figure it out. I mentioned this last time where, listen, I was bullish on Jordan Love. It didn't look great early, but now they've won 4 out of their last 5. They beat the Rams, they beat the Chargers, they beat the Lions, they beat the Chiefs. Now, the question I have for you, at least up front, is when you think about how those teams have played of late, do you feel like there's a little bit of paper tiger energy around the Packers just because some of these teams, even like the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Lions struggling right now, maybe they caught some of these teams at the right time, but there are certainly elements of this roster that have finally come through. It starts with the quarterback play and Jordan Love.
Well, this is what I was saying. Like even a month ago, if you said that the Packers were going to rally off those wins against those types of teams, yeah, a month ago it was the Chiefs and the Lions potentially rematching the Super Bowl, and now we're saying like, man, both of those teams are falling pretty mightily. They need to right the ship to be able to host a wild card game. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
things are drastically changing. The Packers look more comfortable with Jordan Love. You know, it obviously took him a little while to get things taken care of, to feel confident that he is the starting quarterback. You know, the wide receivers, they threw him out there with a whole host of young wide receivers in Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson. Like there's
And Watson
no
was hurt to the start, and he could be hurt tonight, but he was hurt for the start of this season. He missed multiple games to start the year.
right. I think he's their best wide receiver, and he's been in and out of the lineup for them. They don't have that veteran, that Adam Thielen or someone to be able to say like, "Hey, I'll get you. I'll run a professional route and just get you a few yards whenever you need it." That is a little bit of a concern. Jordan Love has looked great.
Yes.
Full stop. Period. He has looked great. I am very interested to see when Wink Martindale is blitzing the living daylights out of him, if he still looks like he's making the right reads and progressions without his number one wide receiver and no time to throw the football.
A very quick side note here. Do you think that the Green Bay Packers maybe regret not like sniffing around veteran wide receiver or something at the trade deadline because the record didn't look like it was worth doing it? But I can just see the world. They have a lot of young guys and maybe they're fine with their timeline because it's not like we're talking, Super Bowl run for Green Bay. So they probably wouldn't have. But you mentioned that about like, well, wouldn't have hurt. If we could have brought in a veteran here, it wouldn't have killed us to have that in our wide receiver room.
Yeah, I don't know if they regret it because I think that the Packers organization is pretty realistic with where they are. Like they're starting to get
Yeah. Yeah.
better at the right time, but do they think that they can go to San Francisco and win a football game? Like I think they're not delusional about where they kind of are, and so why give up future draft capital just to fill a short term hole right now? So while it may hurt them in the short term, longer term, I think letting Jordan Love grow with these young wide receivers is probably the best bet for them.
First 2 games of the year, Jordan Love had 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, QBRs of 75 and 82. Over the next handful of games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, he threw 6, 7, 8 interceptions. Now, since then, he's thrown just 2 picks. The last 2 games, talk about bookending a season right now, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions against Kansas City, against Detroit. His QBR has been 73, 59, 90.4 QBR, not rating, QBR, and a 90.2. So playing really smart football. But to your point about the Giants defense and inside of this game, in 2 out of those 4 games, just the 1 game, I thought it was a little bit lower against Detroit. Go back to that Pittsburgh game. I wonder if that's a little bit of the defensive model you want to follow, where he only completes 52% of his passes, right? Where you do get the turnovers from him. Do you think that Wink Martindale and this defense can dial it up? And is this wide receiver core, even though they're young, the right wide receiver core for this secondary to face? Because they got some quick guys, some shiftier players, even without Christian Watson, where you go, okay, we got to get out in space. We got to move with some of these dudes. And even a guy like Deonte Banks, it's like, I want to play physical with you. I have the speed, but my physicality is what I'm banking on. Getting caught in space can sometimes be a problem for the Giants secondary.
Well, listen, you're in the NFL, Adam. Like every week, you're going to go, like, there's different challenges that you face. When you go up against the Philadelphia Eagles, you've got A.J. Brown, who's the number one wide receiver. You have Devonta Smith, who runs amazing routes. When you look at the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb is, clearly
Sure.
now a top 5. At some point, you're going to run into like really, really good wide receiver play. The fact that there is no Christian Watson, the fact that it is still younger guys trying to make a name for themselves, I like the Giants cornerbacks and defense in this matchup against the Green Bay wide receivers. I think if you were to say who has the advantage, I would say the Giants defense has the advantage in this one.
Experience, certainly, right? Like, you have guys that have some experience even with rookie players, but you have a lot of guys, including Bobby Okereke in the middle anchoring this defense, which I will bring up. You mentioned that, Aaron Jones, whether or not he's going to be 100% healthy and ready to go. If it ends up being A.J. Dillon, the one thing that we've seen over time with this Giants defense is they do get gashed in the run game, right? It has been an issue for them throughout the course of this season. Now, the weird part is one, A.J. Dillon is a load, right? He's a big physical runner. It's not like he's going to run away from you. And he only averages 3.5 yards per carry this season on 149 attempts. On the one hand, I'm like, great. You can just bottle it up and focus in on this guy. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to ask you. I'll say it. I always have this concern. The fall forward for 5 yards, right? The break through the line and break an arm tackle for 7 or 8 yards. That may actually be as critical as anything in this game. To your point about, hey, I believe in the secondary. I think we have some playmakers here. I think Wink can dial some things up. But if you can't make it one-dimensional for stretches of this game, if Green Bay can play balanced football, then it just becomes kind of, hey, can you go toe-to-toe? And we'll get over to the offensive side for the Giants. But I don't think, that's not a game script the Giants want. They need to be able to put pressure on Green Bay to have to come from behind, to have to play out of character for stretches of this game.
Giants ranked 29th in rushing yards allowed per game. A
How
lot
many
of it
total teams we got in
also
this league?
32 teams. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
not great.
it's not good and it's not great at all. But I mean, a lot of it also is game script though, Adam. Like you think about
Yes.
some of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
early games where they're getting beat up by the Cowboys and they just decide to run the ball, or the 49ers or whomever. A lot of that has to do with game script. Depending on if Aaron Jones is out, that is an important distinction. I think the Giants are going to sit there and say, we like our cornerbacks. We like Deontay Banks one-on-one against whoever you want. We are going to make you throw the ball and make you beat us over the top. Xavier McKinney has looked awesome the last few games. He's going to be back there kind of playing that center field role. Go ahead. Try to throw the football on us, but we are not going to let you just run it all over us. Now, that's easy to say when you're 29th in giving up rushing yards per game.
Sure.
That's going to be your focus. But I really do think that that's what they're going to say is Okereke steps up. Micah McFadden steps up and they say, try to throw it over our heads because that's the only way that we're going to challenge you to beat us.
Now let's flip it over. New York Football Giants offense. It's a powerhouse. Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, Tommy Italiano. Do you think that this team, now probably having the first game, I'd say, because you beat the Commanders, right? Like, let's just be real. And you beat the Patriots 10-7. This does feel like the Tommy DeVito, are you legitimately a backup quarterback in the NFL capable of coming in and guiding the ship? Or has this been a little bit of fun for a couple of weeks and there could be a dose of reality? Green Bay is not a perfect defense, but they on paper coming into this year were supposed to be one of the stronger defenses. I think we kind of forget the fact that they haven't performed that standard, at least to start the season, but they are not a bad defense. And I feel like this is the test coming here. Although, to be fair, even though it was 10-7, the Patriots aren't a bad defense either. Like, Tommy DeVito has at least seen something that represents like, hey, it's going to be hard. And he's played smart football. He's played error-free football. Like, that's mattered relative to who you've gone up against.
Yeah, listen, the Giants, so here's the way I'm thinking about it. Tommy DeVito looked significantly more.
This feels like it's going to be a loaded response.
No, well, no, but listen, like Tommy DeVito, while the Giants have not been putting up huge, numbers outside the Commanders game, the last 2 games, Tommy DeVito has had, against the Commanders, he had that 137 passer rating. Even against the Patriots, when they didn't look great, there was a couple of those turnovers. He completed 68% of his passes.
Yep.
He had a passer rating over 100. So, like when they asked him to do things, he was able to do it. I think that there's 2 things that I'm looking at on the offensive side of the ball here. One is the Giants are coming off a bye week and an extended bye week where they've had plenty of time to plan and prepare. And we have seen the more that Tommy DeVito gets reps, the more that they incorporate into this game plan, the better he looks. The more we've seen Jalen Hyatt move into getting more snaps, the better the team looks. I cannot discount the fact that the Giants have had 2 weeks to prepare for this Green Bay team when every single day is a valuable rep for someone like Tommy DeVito, who basically didn't get any first team reps at all during the preseason. So, Adam, that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like time is actually really valuable for a guy like Tommy DeVito. Probably less as important for some of the upper echelon quarterbacks who can just go out there and sling it. He needs those reps. He needs a game plan to be put in place. And the one other thing that I think is important is we said the Giants were 29th in rushing yards allowed.
Yes,
There's only 32 teams.
that's right.
Well, guess what? The Green Bay Packers are 30th in rushing yards allowed. And we know the Giants want to pound the ball with Saquon Barkley. It's been the reason why he's getting 20 plus carries in a lot of these games. There's only a couple teams that are worse than the Giants at stopping the run. Green Bay is one of them. And when you think about cold, 35-degree game, going to be a little windy at MetLife Stadium on a Monday night, I could see the Giants running the ball 30 times in this game and just saying, we're going to ask Tommy to be very selective with the deep shots that he takes, and we are going to try to get 4 yards on every carry with Saquon Barkley down the field.
How bullish are you going to be on how many yards you think that Saquon Barkley can grab you here? We'll go ahead and start to get into our kind of picks and predictions about this game. But right now, as it stands, if you want to go alternate rushing yards, you want to get to plus money, you got to go 80 plus yards for Saquon Barkley. Are you living in that plus territory with Saquon?
Adam, his over-under is only 69 yards.
That's right.
69 yards rushing, right? And the Packer, like, think about the scenario that we're working with. You have an undrafted rookie quarterback that only has a handful of starts, starting in a primetime game at night in the wind in 30-degree weather. Like the Giants, it would be malfeasance if the Giants made Tommy DeVito throw the ball 45 times. Like, to me, I believe Saquon Barkley is going to get the ball at least 20 times. At least 20 times. And so when you think about the number there, all he needs is just one. I'm very confident that he's getting over 69 yards rushing in this game. I think it's probably closer to 100 than it is closer to 69. That to me is when you talk about best bets of the day. If you were to do Saquon Barkley and Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown, you get 2-1 on your money. To me, that's the game plan. If you're rooting for the Giants to win, the game plan is give the Saquon Barkley the ball and everyone get out of the way.
Now, by the way, simultaneously tonight, you're going to have the Tennessee Titans are going to be playing as well. So just from that draft order perspective, there's two things to note here. Again, we come into the game, the Giants start playing. We want to see them win. That's all that matters from an OGP perspective. But remember, the Giants have beaten the Commanders. So even if you end up having the same record at 4-9, Washington's going to have the hedge on you. So just keep that in your mind here as you look up the board. Tennessee could win or they could lose, and that could affect how we see ourselves in the standing as well. But I'm going to tell you right now, Andy, before we give our official predictions, you want to bet? Here's a bet. Tommy DeVito, over 200 passing yards, gets you plus money at plus 182. Now, I know that number, like, it's like, can Tommy DeVito throw for 20 yards? And I'm not talking about him. It's about the wind, the conditions, all those things. But 200 yards? Sometimes guys fall over for 200 yards. You go ahead and you lay that in there with Saquon Barkley, alternate rushing line. 80 plus. I'm going to take that. That's plus 136. It's plus 182 for the plus 200 on Tommy DeVito. And then I give you a little something here. I'm not going to go too bullish. You see me do this before. Anytime touchdowns. That's always my Achilles heel. I'm going to be bullish with Jalen Hyatt in a different way. 3+ receptions. That's plus 124. I think they get the ball into the hands of this playmaker, not just on a couple of deep passes that can help Tommy DeVito with his yardage, but also just getting some of those little end-around routes, right? The jet sweeps, short things over the middle. Maybe Wan'Dale Robinson is your flavor as well. I could see that being the case. You put those three narrowly above plus 100 odds together, Andrew, you're talking about plus 960 on the same game parlay. Get the heck out of here.
I mean, I know you like that. I don't know if I can get there. I think they're going to have Tommy DeVito be very selective in it. I'm
200
surprised
yards.
I'm surprised you like the Jalen Hyatt receptions. If you're going to like Jalen Hyatt, his receiving yards is 26.5. Like, he gets that. He's averaging 19 point something per reception. Like,
but I gotta cook the books here, Andy. I gotta get myself to a sexy place. What's the percentages on the yardage there for him?
I mean, it's even money on 26.5 yards.
No,
like, to me,
even money, Andy. We're not having enough fun here. I want to have fun. All right, listen.
All
You
right,
want to go
prediction
with
time.
Jalen Hyatt? I need alternate receiving yards. Let's do the dance. You want alternate receiving yards? They're not even going to give it to me. See, they're not even going to give me alternate receiving yards for Jalen Hyatt. That's how little that they want to dance inside of these waters. I don't believe it.
Well, Adam, listen. Yeah, you're right. They don't actually have it. That's unbelievable. They have the
See?
alternate receptions. I think that's one of those where they're like, I don't know, he had 100 yards last game. Like, if you're going to give me 6-1 and that he gets another 100, like that would be pretty interesting. All right, prediction time. Adam, we've talked about you
Yes.
liking Tommy DeVito throwing for 400. Did you say 400 yards today?
Yeah, I
Was
think
that the
450.
number? Yeah,
450.
450.
Yeah.
A few touchdowns to Jalen Hyatt. Maybe Jalen Hyatt has 10 receptions today. So clearly, you think the high octane New York Giants offense is just gonna look like the Rams' greatest show on turf. Talk to me a little bit about game, how you think this game's gonna go, what you're looking out for, and ultimately what the prediction is on whether or not the Giants can win this one.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's going to come down to I think weather conditions are always a fun one. I should have noticed this when I was playing fantasy and the Houston Texans were playing against the Jets. Doesn't matter that Stroud ended up going down in this game, that Nico Collins went down in that game. It was like torrentially downpouring. It was going to damper things. Not that it's going to be as big a factor, but I think wind should be a factor in this one. When you go back and we talked about this with the Green Bay Packers, listen, they've put up 29 points against the Lions, 23 against the Chargers. They got the 27 points against the Chiefs. I think the thing that's most important here for the Giants is to make this a grinding battle for Green Bay. Don't give up the big explosive play because the one thing the Giants don't want to be doing is playing from behind in this. If you can keep it close, if you can make it possession by possession, then I think it just becomes a football game. We saw this all weekend long. Like no matter what you thought it was going to be, all of a sudden you're in the third quarter of a game and you haven't blown a team out. And that means that it's still a football game. And then I can start to believe in the defense a little bit more. I think the Giants defense still gets overlooked down the second half of this season. They've been way better than people give them credit for. The team is bad. They haven't won a ton of football games, so it makes it easy to go past them. I want to see disruption on the offensive front. I think Kayvon Thibodeau could be in for a little bit of a night for himself here, getting some pressure on that Jordan Love. And I see an interception. I see an interception for the first time in a few weeks for Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers. With that being said, grind it out offensively. I believe in Saquon Barkley. I think he's the stud and the star of this one. It's why I'm not going too crazy on yardage for Jalen Hyatt, though I think will be successful. Who knows? Maybe I won't put in the over 200 for Tommy DeVito. The bottom line is I'm taking the New York Football Giants in this game to win it outright. Now, if I want to just be smart, I'll take the 6 points at home. I think they keep it close enough here, obviously. Maybe this is the wake-up call moment for them. But I'm going to say that the Giants can get this thing if Saquon Barkley is doing it right. Like, this needs to be a monster game for him. If I could go over 100 on his all-purpose yards, over 125 on his all-purpose yards, like I might, because I think that's how critical he is to their success tonight. New York Football Giants, 20-17.
Listen, I can't knock what you're saying. I mean, I feel very strongly that this is a 20 carry Saquon Barkley game. Obviously, if the game script changes and the Giants get down early and they say we have to throw our way back into it with Tommy DeVito, that's going to be a struggle and a challenge for the Giants. Both of these teams want to run the football.
Yeah.
Both of these teams have difficulty stopping the run, which generally eats time of possession. It kind of brings the game to a grinding halt. It's like, a touchdown or a field goal here or there is going to be the difference. It's not a game where it's just shootout and you can kind of live with the turnovers because you're going to get it back later. To me, I like the Giants feeding Saquon Barkley. I
Mm-hmm.
like the Giants giving it to him around the goal line, him scoring a touchdown. I also like the Giants to win this outright. I think having 2 weeks plus the extra
Yes.
day to plan and prepare for the Packers at home, where they're without their best offensive weapon and best defensive weapon. I just see this being a victory for the Giants. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I've got the Giants winning this game 17-13, and I feel good about it. Like I thought I'd be worried after seeing what the Packers did before, but I don't know. Them going on the road against a team that's had multiple weeks to plan and prepare for them. This feels like a tough spot for Green Bay. And if it comes true, Adam, and the Giants win this outright, like you and I are suggesting, the Giants will be one game out of the playoff picture with a few to go.
Ooh, baby. Isn't that all that we're dreaming on? Is an opportunity to have one more week where you're thinking about what could be, right? One more week where maybe the New York Football Giants can still do something with the New Orleans Saints on tap and some of these other games that we'll all be watching going forward. I vamp there a little bit just because I want to get to a different parlay bet because I'm an intrigued man and I want to get even juicier on these things. It's the way that I like to roll. Andy, just before we get out the door, I want to tell you a story. Stories about Saquon Barkley getting over 80 rushing yards. We believe in that. We love it. We like it. We want more of it. I'm also going to tell you a story about how Darius Slayton has had 2 catches last week against New England in a very low scoring affair, but he had 4 catches the week prior. 3 catches against Dallas, 4 catches against the Vegas Raiders. So I do a little dance and I say 3+ receptions for Darius Slayton. And then anytime touchdown, remember, there's a little player out there, forgotten rookie from a year ago, Daniel Bellinger. Say it with me. Daniel Bellinger, anytime touchdown. You roll those up into a little 3-play parlay sausage, and you get plus 3,500 odds. Night, night.
I mean, Adam, I know you're feeling it. We better hope that I don't mind that Waller's going to be out still. I know that you like the long shots, but it's not a long shot. The Giants don't have to win this game. I really do think they're going to win it.
Oh, baby, man. It's going to be fun. Listen, I don't care. I know everybody goes different ways with the way seasons are and being 4-8 and all that stuff. I like watching my team win football games. So that's what I root for. And I think it is possible, right? We're not talking about playing the Dallas Cowboys for the 3rd time this season. It's the Green Bay Packers. I think it's a gettable game at home. And I think the 2 weeks here with the bye week, as Andy mentioned, is critical. If we believe in this coaching staff, then you better believe that they've put together a game plan for Tommy DeVito, for Saquon Barkley to be successful. Get over to YouTube, guys, because we just gave you 45 minutes of luxurious performance here, talking about this matchup, the playoff picture, all those good things. Turn on the alerts, One Giant Podcast. Go over to Twitter, One Giant Podcast, at AndyMac214, at Adam Armbrecht, and wherever you get your podcast needs fulfilled. Until next time, until Victory Tuesday, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.